and welcome to another episode of Marketplace Masters, brought to you by Merchant Spring, the leading marketplace analytics platform for agencies and investors. Marketplace Masters is all about diving into the questions agencies face to help them serve clients better and scale their business. I'm Paul, your host, and today we are exploring Amazon's demand-side platform and how agencies can use it to help scale their brands. To help me do this, I've invited Brian Johnson to join us and share his expertise. Let me take a minute to introduce our guest. Brian has helped over 20,000 brands sell over $1 billion on Amazon through ad strategy and conversion rate optimization. He offers guidance to and partners with brands and sellers through his Amazon PPC troubleshooting community, coaching, innovative PPC software, professional training courses, and his flagship advertising and marketing agency, Canopy Management. Thank you for being on the show today, Brian.
Paul, thanks for having me.
It's Amazon DSP is a really hot topic, and I must admit, I struggle to get my head around it. Right, I can just about explain the Amazon advertising console and the difference between a product display campaign and a sponsored brand campaign, but when it comes to DSP, it just feels like it's another universe.
Yeah.
So let's get straight into that. Right, in layman's terms, what is Amazon DSP? How do you explain it to your clients?
Well, so I mean, I completely agree with you. Is that DSP is rather intimidating because you need special access to get a hold of it. It is far more complex than Amazon native PPC advertising has been and still is. Far more complex, and it's really more of the to kind of frame it. And I can go through some slides that'll talk about some of the basics of DSP to help each of you, who are maybe not familiar with it, certainly intimidated with it by like I was originally. And I had to have my own team because my background was primarily the Amazon native PPC advertising. And so for me to get up to speed with Amazon DSP was actually after the fact. It was actually after we already had a team that was already managing demand side platform for some of our clients back in the last couple of years. And I'm like going, it's like, I don't want to even, get into this thing, but I had to, right? I had to understand it because ultimately these kind of conversations come up certainly with clients and they say, hey, well, what about this? Or should we be doing it? And I can't just sit there with a blank look on my face and say like, I don't know, because that doesn't go over too well. So ultimately here's kind of, there's a number of things that I could say on this, a number of slides that I'm willing to show here. But let's start out with just kind of a really high level overview as far as DSP. So DSP is Amazon's secondary display advertising platform. So most agencies, most consultants, most ad managers are familiar with Amazon's native Seller Central, sponsored product ads, sponsored brand ads, sponsored display ads, and they've gotten themselves familiar pretty well with those. They've probably even had experience as far as with sponsored display ads, setting up ads that run for remarketing or retargeting off Amazon, targeting custom audiences. Well, sponsored display ads, as far as the remarketing ads, as far as the audience targeting ads, is kind of like the little baby brother of DSP. DSP is the enterprise version of this. And so we kind of say that sponsored display ads is the light version of DSP. It's a very, very light, paper thin kind of light version of DSP. That means, though, is that demand side platform or DSP is very powerful and has a huge amount of capabilities if you are working with the right type of client. In other words, I will say that generally the client that we say is the best fit, we've gotten a lot more, our range of flexibility has increased certainly with experience over the years, but we generally say that, while we say it's like, well, we recommend that you spend at least $10,000 a month in ad spend. Frankly, we don't tend to recommend DSP to our clients until they're doing at least $100,000 a month on Amazon in sales, in overall sales. At that point, it does start making sense. We also look at the products that they're selling in order to determine whether or not it's good fit, whether or not we think that the advertising that comes through the DSP platform is a good fit for the kind of products that they sell. Obviously, I just introduced some complexities already. Let me kind of go through a few slides and just kind of try to go through these a little bit rapidly here. If I can share my screen, if I may.
Yeah.
There we go. And cool. All right, we'll get past that one. So kind of what I was just talking about before, as far as just kind of comparing, wrapping our head around this. So just kind of comparing, you've got Amazon's native PPC advertising. The native PPC advertising is actually technically it's the first three. So it's sponsored product ads, sponsored brand ads, sponsored display ads. Native as in native to the Seller Central platform. The display advertising or DSP platform, also known as demand side platform, is the demand side platform or DSP, right? So to kind of frame this in a way, you already probably know is that the sponsored product ads are primarily for keyword targeting, product targeting. You can include automatic campaigns, category campaigns, these, and being able to have that kind of variation of targeting, but primarily they're designed to be keyword targeting ads and product targeting ads. Sponsored brand ads, also keyword targeting ads, product targeting ads. You just have some additional assets or different placements on Amazon that allows you to show your ads in a different way, get more custom with your images and your creative, be able to show videos, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an expanded version, but primarily it's more for your product catalog presentation or your brand presentation, attempting to get new shoppers to know who your brand is. Sponsored display ads, it's kind of a little bit of a mix here. Okay. So it has product targeting, but it also introduces audience targeting and remarketing. So with audience targeting, that can be things as far as like lifestyle. It can be demographics, like hey, it's a female age between 50 and 60 years old. If you happen to have a product that has a narrow audience that you can pin down to that level. And I'll tell you how to kind of uncomplicate that here in a bit. But it gives us the ability to do a certain amount of retargeting. You can run sponsored display ads both on Amazon along with the rest of the ads. You can also run it on Amazon's partner sites, and there's thousands of them out there, off Amazon, so that you have those ads that the remarketing ads are essentially the ads where, let's say you visit Amazon and you're looking for what's the thing I just got? It was one of the dash cameras, for my truck, right? Yeah. To record accidents in front of me, and I can put them on YouTube and be famous, right? For insurance purposes, actually. But I'm shopping for dash cams, but I didn't make a decision yet, right? I did not actually purchase one. Well, I leave Amazon and I start going off onto other websites, and all of a sudden I start seeing ads for the one I was shopping for, maybe even ads for other dash cams that I wasn't shopping for all on Amazon. And those ads are just following me around to different websites that I might be visiting. And it's essentially what they've done is they've identified that, hey, I'm looking for this, did not make a purchase. And then now the ads, because your data of where you're going and what your browser is showing, they drop what's called a pixel, which is simply like a tracking link or a tracking identifier that allows, when you visit another site, if it has an ad space that can run an ad, then it'll look at that tracking ID and say, okay, let me go out and pull some ads that I can show on this website that you're now visiting, and I can potentially get some ad revenue by showing your ad. And maybe Amazon, of course, is getting you to come back and buy a product. And so that's kind of like the idea of the ads showing up on different sites after you've already left Amazon.
Yeah.
This is
So,
not a new thing. This is
yeah.
something that's been around for decades through Google, for instance.
Yeah, and actually, can I just pause you on that, because I want sort of want to ask you another sort of 1,000 feet question. You know, from an Amazon agency's point of view, getting in there.
Yep.
You know, traditionally, this is more the domain of like the traditional digital marketing agencies. You know, Google, Facebook, big programmatic advertising, big budgets.
Yeah.
How is the Amazon's version of DSP kind of different, and you know, why Amazon as opposed to Facebook or Google or some of the other big platforms out there?
Yeah. What's the advantage of Amazon, for instance, or what's their take on it?
Yeah,
Well, first
correct.
of all, display advertising in general is kind of interesting because when they talk about things as far as you know, a demand side platform or an ad exchange or programmatic advertising, those are like terms that we don't have, you know, in our native education of Amazon ads. And so it's rather intimidating. And you think it's like, well, I'm not going to go back to school and get a marketing degree just so I can learn the terminology here. Here's let me break this down a little bit here for you. Demand side platform is simply just saying, think of basic economics, supply and demand. The supply is thousands of websites have a space on their web pages, on their website, and it's for rent. Okay. And their supply is saying, like, you can rent this space with your ad. The demand is us as advertisers saying, I want to purchase or I want to rent this blip, this particular moment on your website when a shopper that I've programmatically identified, in other words, that I have identified through their demographics, or I've tracked them coming off of Amazon. Amazon has said, hey, this person, you know, shopped for your product but didn't buy it. I can now run an ad that I can program that ad to run for a particular shopper on other sites where I've rented a little, you know, square on their web pages. That's the supply of the demands, the supply and demand side platform. And my demand for that ad space is the demand that I'm paying for in order to run my ad. So it's simply just a bartering exchange, if you will, for ads, for virtual ad space on other sites off of Amazon. And I'm programming the ad, or I'm setting the ad to only show to certain people that I've identified as, I either know who they are because Amazon has told me who they are, or I think I know who they are because they fit my demographic or lifestyle or life event or something that is related to my product or my brand, and I can show them the ads. And I've got 50 other controls that I can put in there. Things like, I only want my ad to show to this particular type of person or this particular person 5 times. Now, I don't know who that person is. It's not like I have their name and address or something that specific, right? That, for privacy concerns and for e-commerce in general, that is kept in control by things like Amazon and the exchanges. But the demand side platform allows me as an advertiser to say, I want to show ads to this target audience that is more granular, more specific, more customized than what I could on Amazon through just keywords and product targeting. And I can essentially rent space on and have ads that follow this person around, with the hopes that if they keep on seeing my ads, they'll be constantly reminded. It's like, oh, you know what? I really, I meant to get that. Let me go ahead and just click through, and they come back to your site and maybe they purchase your product. The cool thing about that is it doesn't have to be where they visited your product, because Amazon will tell you, hey, you know what? They visited your competitor's product listing. Do you want to run an ad for them off of Amazon? Yes, I do. Of course I do, because I want to steal away that customer.
Yeah.
And so things like demand side platform and ad exchange and programmatic, they sound like big words, but once you finally break it down and you kind of like, oh, all that's saying is like, cool, I can rent space and I can target the audience that I want to target. All right. What's with the big, 9-syllable words? So,
yeah. So actually, while you're on that, I just have one more big word that I'd love for you to explain. And I watched a couple of YouTube videos trying to get as I was preparing for this conversation. And a lot of people are talking about, Amazon has a benefit because it has access to first-party data. It's just a statement out there without explanation, right? Can you demystify that particular phrase too for us while you're
Yeah, first-party data is simply just saying like they've collected their own data, right? You're not simply just you're not tapping into a pool from an ad exchange, from a Facebook audience, from a shared pixel. They're essentially first party data. Is Amazon saying this shopper has a history of buying these type of products, and therefore they fit into this bucket of having this kind of standard purchase behavior? In other words, Amazon owns data about that target audience that you want to advertise to, and they're allowing you to say like, okay, we're going to pool. We've got 50,000 people who have done something similar on Amazon. They've purchased a similar product. They've considered purchasing a product. They purchased a collection of products because, oh, look, they're expecting a baby and now they're going out and they're buying all these things. That's a life event. They got a baby coming. They are located in Austin, Texas. That's a demographic. They just turned 65. They just moved to a new state. There's a number of things that they're essentially pooling or putting into buckets a bunch of Amazon shoppers, and so they own that data. They're the first priority as far as owning that data. And so that's kind of what they're saying as far as like the first party data is they own that data. That is one of the main reasons why Amazon DSP is so powerful compared to Google remarketing ads, Facebook pixel remarketing ads, is because on Facebook, you're essentially talking about social media. Yeah, they're going to have some demographics as far as like age and sex and, their connections to other people and maybe even some shopping behavior on Facebook. Google will primarily have search information. It's like, okay, what are you researching? What are you trying to get to know more information about? But Amazon has that data of what did they actually purchase? What are they looking for now? What have they purchased in the past? What are they most likely to purchase? Because their machine learning algorithms are constantly looking over our shoulders. And so Amazon has a significant advantage because they're closest to the shopping cart, and you're allowed to essentially target people with that kind of enhanced data, enhanced targeting that allows you as an advertiser to say, it's like, look, I want to reliably show my ads to people who have a high likelihood of actually purchasing the product that I sell. And so that's a huge advantage compared to Google and Facebook and MSN. And there's a bunch of other display ad exchanges out there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Closer to the closer you get to the wallet and the wallet behavior,
Exactly.
the more easily translates into sale. That definitely makes sense. And
Yep.
I now actually understand how, clearly Amazon has access to this huge amount of data, particularly in big markets like, in North America and Europe, which is very, very powerful. So let's go back down for the 1,000 feet view. I think it's been super helpful to set the scene context and actually help me understand what DSP is about.
Yep.
Let's put our agency sort of hat back on, right? You mentioned this before in terms of it's not for everyone. You're only looking for, brands with particular characteristics. I want to just dive a little bit further into that.
Okay.
Put yourself in the shoes of, many Merchant Springs customers, they might be managing 50 brands in North America, Europe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my, 50 customers, how do I go through which ones should I maybe even have a conversation with about, hey, have you thought about this?
The low-hanging
fruit. What goes through your mind as you would go through a list like that?
Yeah. I mean, the low-hanging fruit, the ones that I have the first conversation with are those that are doing more sales than the rest of them. Your top 10%. Those are the ones that I would talk to in the first place. mainly because they're probably doing some kind of advertising. First of all, they're probably doing some kind of advertising off Amazon already, and you just don't know about it, right? Maybe they're even already working with Amazon for the demand side platform, because Amazon does offer that kind of management service. But Amazon's own teams handle it much differently than an agency should handle DSP, right? Certainly not the way that we would do it. So with take a brand, for instance, that is selling, I mentioned $100,000. The reason I say $100,000 in sales is because usually it's a combination of they have enough budget where they can do some speculative investing into ad testing. Now, I don't recommend starting out with Amazon DSP. I recommend getting to the point where you know which keyword targeting, which product targeting, and which products that you sell, what combination of those three are doing well, and then carry that over to DSP based off of what you've learned. Because in Seller Central, in your brand dashboard, you're going to have not only across the entire brand, you're going to have some demographic information that Amazon provides inside of your brand dashboard, inside of brand analytics. You can also narrow that down to each individual product. So usually, in order for that to be statistically significant or more accurate, to be able to target and to stand out enough for you to really say, you know what, predominantly women buy this particular product. That's good to know. We can go heavier, or we can spend a higher ad budget on any platform, including DSP. Now that we have a hint that there's a more likelihood that we can narrow in who we're trying to target through DSP advertising. Here's kind of where this comes into play. The last thing I will say is that if they're at 100,000, they probably have enough revenue and enough profitability already in order to fund active DSP testing. You really kind of need to do that. Similar to the way you would start out with TikTok ads or YouTube ads, DSP is going to require a certain amount of budget. I would say at least 5,000, probably more likely at least 10,000. Committing $10,000 in budget and really wrap the head around and understand, okay, how do we now shift our methodologies and our strategies and our thinking from keyword targeting, which is pretty simplistic, right? It's like, okay, people are searching for this. Why not run an ad on this particular search term? Okay, pretty simple. Product targeting. Okay, I've got a direct competitor and that's their product and they're out of stock now, or they're getting beat up on the reviews, or I've got a better price, or I've got a better product, I've got a better mousetrap than they have. I can run ads against them. But now you're starting to shift into things that are a little bit more vague, if you will. In other words, if you have a strong indicator in your brand analytics that says, hey, predominantly male, predominantly in the age of 55 to 60, these kinds of things where there's some kind of outlier that says, like, you know what, most people, this product seems to be pretty narrowly targeted to this particular profile or persona. And you can go after some of the demographics. Now, brand analytics is very, very limited as far as what it tells you, right? Compared to what you can advertise against inside of DSP. One of the challenges, one of the things I had to get past, and when I did, I fully committed to it, is I had always made the mistake as an entrepreneur of thinking that creating a persona for my target audience and painting this picture of like, oh, this person's name is Bob and they've got a wife and 2 dogs and they live in this city and they've got this kind of car and this kind of stuff. I thought that was completely fluff. Now, don't get me wrong, I still do. But I thought that was very academic. I thought it's like, well, that's kind of cool for marketing school, for a master's degree in marketing. But let's talk about real life here, right? I don't want to do that much work. Guess what? you didn't have to in previous years on Amazon or any e-commerce platform. But as the competition rises, that is when you start seeing where you've got to get a better handle on who your target audience is. The nice thing about this is that you can push some pressure back on your client in order to do this work. Now, they can certainly hire you to do this kind of investigation of really identifying who their target audience is, but they probably know their target audience based off the product that they brought to market better than you do. And really, they should be doing this. And if they're not willing to do this, that's kind of a red flag or an indicator yourself, is that they're only willing to do so much.
Yeah.
You definitely, if you're working with a wholesaler, you're much less likely to ever get that.
Yeah, of course. I just want to quickly get onto the budget expectation, because I'm hearing some really large sums being bandied around. In fact, I heard someone say last week, minimum spend is $35,000 on DSP. If you go through an agency, it's sort of like less than that.
Yeah. Amazon.
How does it work?
Yeah, so Amazon is so there's three different ways, or there's two different ways. So you have Amazon managed and you've got self-serve. Okay. Self-serve is very limited as far as like who can actually get access to it. Usually it's the larger agencies or agencies who have pulled in a favor in order to get access to the self-serve version of demand side platform. They're starting to open it up more, and so it's getting more flexible. But Amazon has their own teams that will manage your demand side or your DSP advertising for you. However, there's a couple problems with the way they do it. One is, and this is going to be of no surprise to people, is they're in it for themselves because what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, we're going to get you all this visibility. We're going to get so much brand exposure for you. If you translate that, what that means is impressions, right? They're going to show your ad everywhere. And we need you to be able to spend $35,000 a month. I think a couple of years ago, they put it on sale for like 25 grand a month. But primarily what they're doing is they're accountable, and they will tell you all day long. It's like, hey, how cool, how great did we do? We got you in front of, 6 million, potential new customers. You're like, cool. How many sold? And they're like going, isn't it awesome? You got 6 million new eyeballs on your brand. You're like, yeah, but how much did we profit? It's like 6 million new people, huh? Right? You're like, okay, I'm talking to a wall here. Yeah. They're clearly spending your money in order to just blanket, just to shotgun out these DSP ads. You really don't want to do that. And that can get extremely costly. One of the reasons why Amazon, I believe, has, I think it's like a 3-month contract. I don't know if they still have that currently this year, but they certainly have in the past. Now, agencies like Canopy, for instance, we certainly do this for our clients. There's a couple different tiers of agency account on self-serve, but primarily as an agency, because agencies were generally trying to increase sales, increase market share, increase profitability. Those are our big three mantra, key metrics that we're going after for our clients. Our interests align more with the client's interests, because ultimately they'll fire us because we're on a month-to-month. We're not on a 3-month or a 1-year contract. And so they'll fire us. And we also have the flexibility of coming in as little as, I think as little as $5,000 per month in ad spend. I would recommend starting at least $10,000. Some say, do $40,000, but I think that's more for enterprise level. I would say expect it to spend $10,000. You might be able to get away with $5,000 a month, but you're kind of shortchanging your ability to really test out your potential target audience and really dial in and optimize your ads so that then you get a positive return on your ad spend that outpaces what you're doing through native PPC on Amazon. And so you can still do, they don't call it campaign, they call it orders on DSP, but they call it a campaign. So since most people are familiar with Seller Central's terminology, a campaign, you still want to probably do the standard, thing of like, say, $20 per day as far as a cap, right? There's a whole bunch of other controls, like 10 times as many controls as what you have inside of Seller Central. A lot more granularity, but that also means you've got to be working, you've got to dial this stuff in. And so it is going to be more work, but it is definitely worth doing when you've got a client that really wants to expand. There's certain kinds of products that work better than others, and I'll touch on that here in a second. But the way that we do it with DSP is we try to figure out, okay, what kind of audiences. Let's say, for instance, we've got, well, there's a propensity that, like 60% male, and propensity that there's, men in the range of 40 to 65. That seems like a pretty broad range. But what you can do is you can segment this out into smaller slices. It's similar to what some do from a practice. It's an arguably good or bad practice as far as having solo campaigns where you have a single keyword in a campaign inside of a sponsored product ad, and you run 100 different campaigns on one, and so you've got control of every single one of those. Well, that philosophy actually works pretty well in DSP, where you take smaller slices and you control each one of those, and then you dial in which of those slices are outperforming the rest of them. And 80-20, you get rid of the ones that don't, just like standard optimization of advertising. You get rid of the slices that don't work, the smaller, more narrow target audiences, and you triple down on the ones that are working well for you. That is a best practice inside of DSP. You don't simply just go shotgun like Amazon would do for you. You slice it up and you manage those like you would, where the ad is not showing quite as often to the same person, or maybe you're setting, a different. You're essentially asking for a lower cost for every 1,000 impressions, or you set up different types of targeting goals in DSP. I highly recommend that people go through. I mean, what you had mentioned already is a great place to start. There's plenty of videos of other agency owners who have said, like, hey, here's how DSP works. You've got Amazon's own training, which has gotten a lot better than it was a few years ago, to go through and get, maybe not certified, but at least certainly get into granular as far as what you can do. And then ultimately find a client that is willing to work with you to kind of be the training ground for that. That is usually part of the risk, is getting that first couple of clients to say, you've never done this before, but I'm willing to let you do it with my money.
Yeah, you're willing to work with me on that. Yeah.
Yeah. But ultimately what you've got to do is you got to come in and say, look, you're already selling the X amount, $50,000, $100,000, $1 million a month on Amazon, right? We had a client that did, since it's Prime Day, we had a client that did $1 million yesterday in sales. And I don't say that not to brag. I don't know why everybody says that. It's like, yeah, you're kind of bragging, right? It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm cool. No, but what I'm saying on that is that, like, it's cool to see those kind of numbers, but it's because all of this, because I happen to know all the work that came in order to bring it to this point. It didn't just like going, oh, we just turned on some ads and magic and it worked and it was all profitable. No, it was a lot of work, and it took time to learn it. But if you're not willing to go through some pain, I can guarantee you, like, my first year of our agency was brutal. I can't tell you how many times I lost my voice from yelling, and how much stress I took on the first year. But you got to get through that first year to get your new processes down on paper, and get them bulletproof. But it is definitely worth it for those clients that, especially if, let me give you a couple examples of products that work here. Anything that's, you want to take a look at products that are typically, I would say, at least $20, $25 price point, right? You don't want to have too low a price point because you've got to absorb some of that ad costs initially, right? I would also go for anything that has a longer lifetime value, like replenishable items, subscribe and save kind of items, those kind of things, right? Or anything that has any kind of a future upsell or cross-sell opportunity for you. The longer lifetime value allows you to spend more initially also. Most of the cost and the risk is going to be on the front end, but it is definitely worth doing. I would also look at it from a standpoint of focus in on doing limited retargeting ads for shoppers. And this is just one example of an ad type is you can run ads that are remarketing or retargeting off Amazon to those shoppers who didn't make a purchase yet. Whether that is your competitor or it's your own, start out with just retargeting those who are your own. The cool thing about this is another best practice that we use here is we'll stack different DSP ads. So in other words, we'll run some general ads that are designed in order to bring brand awareness to our target audiences, the slices of target audiences that we know buy the kind of products that we're selling. And so we'll run ads that are just kind of like, saying, hey, you got to check out our brand or check out our product catalog and just kind of get some new to brand traffic to your site. You can primarily we're sending that back to Amazon. You can also send it over to a Shopify site or to your own website if you want to, but generally we're trying to increase the consideration for the products that we have. So most of the time we're sending it back to Amazon, even though it has that flexibility. Yeah. So you're stacking these different types of ads where you're bringing. You're making people aware of your brand, similar to the way the billboards on highways do, right? It may not end up in a conversion today, but how many of you have, you go down your highway and there's some commercial truck accident lawyer and they've got 19 billboards on your commute to work.
I was going to say, it's always the lawyers. Yeah.
Yeah. After a while, you remember, the lawyer's phone number because they make it simple or you just hear it all the time. That is example of brand awareness advertising so that your brand and your product or your service is the first thing they think of when that event occurs. So they're planting seeds that whole time. That's what the brand awareness type of ad is designed to do. And so then you run that, maybe keep that at a low ad spend, and then you stack on remarketing or retargeting when shoppers actually look at your product detail page, your competitor's product detail. Then you maybe run 3 to 5 ads that follow them around to kind of remind them, hey, you didn't check out, come back and, check this out. And you just dial those in. So you stack those on top of each other. And that is a great way in order to not only bring your own traffic to Amazon rather than relying on native PPC advertising, which has gotten very expensive this past year. You've got a lot more control over who you're bringing in because you're actually focused in on who is the target audience that buys my product and how do I reach them?
Yeah. Wow, you've covered so much, Brian. And on one hand, I feel like we've covered a lot today. On the other hand, we feel like we haven't really got into it. It's starting to feel like an iceberg, right? But it's it's certainly been a great context setting, and talking about the potential and how to use it. I know you and I mentioned it just before we went on. I think I'd love to invite you back on the show, actually, to do a much more, practical skills training type session for those agencies that have really started to get their feet wet with DSP. Yeah. Today has been just really fantastic, and it certainly helped me paint a really good picture. So we're about to wrap up, but I do want to have one last question for you, which is, we talked a lot about like successful strategies, and you started to touch on that, but let's talk about mistakes. I'd love to hear from you. Obviously, if you can use a personal example, even better, but also what you see out there in the marketplace. What do you think is maybe the number one or number two mistake that you see people make when it comes to DSP? Things to avoid.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple different ad types I think that we just kind of learned from over time, and we learned because of our mistakes, we learned which ones work better and which ones don't. And that is, you can set things as far as like your retargeting window. In other words, you can say, well, I want it to run ads only to those shoppers who did not make a purchase in the last 14 days, let's say. Right. And so we used to say, it's like, well, I'm going to run it for 90 days, and then what you find is that those all fail because they've been running too long and people just forgot that they were even shopping for it after, 3 weeks. And so then those just spend a whole lot of money. And then you realize like, oh, we shouldn't have let it run that long. But however, on the flip side of that is, let's say, for instance, that you have a product and a shopper actually purchased your product and they click through on the ad and they originally purchased your product. You can actually go back and you can retarget them, let's say 60 days, 90 days later, and say, hey, you know what? It's time to order another one. Maybe it's a supplement that they need to repurchase. Maybe you've upgraded your product and it's, widget number 2, that type of thing. And so we used to run ads mistakenly where we would simply just blanket everything and everything runs for 90 days. And what we really had to learn from that is like, no. This type of ad only runs for 7 to 14 days. This type of ad runs 60 to 90 days. Those are our sweet spots. Similar to the way that we're slicing up audiences, demographics, lifestyle. What are some of the interest, the events, the channel they're on, maybe it's Amazon, Twitch, and it's, like gamers and that kind of stuff. Right. The same way that we've learned, instead of just doing kind of like lazy broadcast type of ads, that was a mistake because that can get really expensive when you're just kind of broadcasting, is to slice it up. That's what we learned, slice up so that your targeting is much more narrow, but you've got a lot more of those. And the same thing goes with how you set each of the ads, more so than you would have on, like, say, Seller Central native PPC ads. There's a lot more individualized settings that you can dial in. And if you take the time, if you don't be lazy and you take the time to split test the different settings and to narrow things down, narrow as far as like, okay, I'm going to test a 7-day window. I'm going to test a 14-day window. I'm going to test a 30-day window. I'm going to test a 60-day window, so instead of just saying like, just shoot it, just keep running it and keep running it for the next 3 months. It's like, no, you learn from those mistakes. And of course that is all money. And I can guarantee you is that when you spend a client's money and it grows and grows and grows, you definitely learn to sit down and bite your tongue when you've got a client that says, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, you guys have blown us money. It's like, but our return on ad spend isn't what we were expecting it to be by now.
Sure.
And so you will have those times where you're going to learn. But that's kind of where I'm making my suggestions to you in order to avoid some of the pain that we went through, is get more narrow in each of the campaigns that you do. The same thing, frankly, can apply over to Seller Central, but certainly in DSP, you want to slice it up more from the get-go. That way you can control it a lot faster and you can identify the smaller segments of what's outperforming the rest of them, instead of simply just saying like, overall, it's either performing or it's not performing. And it's kind of like meh kind of results. You can actually continue to dial in a lot faster. It's a lot more work to set up, but trust me, a lot more work to set up on the front end is a lot better than having a client yell at you for spending all their money.
Yeah.
Guarantee you.
Absolute sense. Yeah. Spend it like it's your own. Be diligent.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Drive results. Do it slowly, and clients will thank you for it. That's great. Well, look, I am looking at the clock. We're about to hit the 45-minute mark here, Brian. So we are certainly out of time. So I'm going to have to wrap it up there. Brian, first of all, I would just want to thank you for coming on the show today and being super generous with your sharing of expertise, tips, tricks, what's worked, the mistakes you've learned the hard way too. I really appreciate it, and I'm very
My pleasure.
grateful. I always ask at the end of any show, for any of our viewers or even other agencies that are interested in maybe working with you or exploring your services, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm on a bunch of different social media, but frankly, I do look at my email. And so if you just want to email me at brian@canopymanagement.com, I'll reply.
I can vouch for that.
I'm here. So.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. That's it for today's episode of Marketplace Masters. Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to visit Merchant Spring to access exclusive offers only available to viewers of this show. Till next time.